Welcome to the Stahls TV class, Performance Wear Challenges, How to Overcome Scorch Marks. I'm Courtney Kubitza with Stahls TV, and performance wear is one of the hottest trends and one of the most popular garment fabrics on the marketplace today. And performance wear, unfortunately, has a variety of challenges when it comes to printing, whether it be with heat presses, screen printing equipment, or embroidery equipment. Last month, we covered a Stahls TV class where we talked about one performance wear challenge of overcoming dye migration. If you didn't get to check out that class, feel free to look at us at stahlstv.com for the archived class, where you can view all of the tips we gave on dye migration. Another issue that we commonly see that we're going to focus on this class is scorch marks. How many of you here have experienced scorch marks before? We're going to launch a poll question shortly, or here to look and see how many of you specifically have come across scorch marks. This is that marking when you go to load a garment onto a heat press, but you notice there's a shiny change in the fabric, or it has a little bit of a discoloration that just doesn't come out whether you wash the fabric or do anything like that. So let's go ahead and launch that poll. Looks like we've got just about everybody on. So if you want to go ahead and give your answers on whether or not you've experienced scorch marks with your performance wear printing, then we'll understand whether or not we're dealing with a challenge that you guys are currently decorating or just trying to prevent it from happening in the future. So Joe, if you want to close that poll down, we'll see where we're at.
Okay, we have 86% of those who voted say that yes, they have, and 14% have not experienced it.
Okay, great. So it looks like a lot of you guys have already experienced this headache and this challenge. So we're going to talk today on how to overcome it when you come across it with other performance fabrics. And I'm not surprised that a lot of you guys have already experienced this. When you come to selecting fabrics, what we see with scorch marks happens differently on light fabrics than we see it on dark fabrics. What tends to happen, regardless of the color of the fabric, is the heat that you're applying with your heat press is just too high of a heat for your garment to withstand, and that's what's causing that little bit of a scorching on that synthetic fabric. I'm going to head over to my heat press and apply what's a very popular transfer type for performance wear, and that's going to be a sublimation transfer. So sublimation transfers by nature apply at a very high dwell time and a very high temperature, and that can cause some challenges with performance wear known as yellowing, where the fabric actually changes a little bit of colors, or you may just have issues with the application. I'm going to head over to that heat press now, change my camera angle, and since I'm applying this to a 100% polyester hoodie, I am going to switch out my bottom platen on my clam heat press and drop in a different size. The size I'll be using is an 11 by 15. And for any type of hooded sweatshirt, when you apply it, that's going to give me the ability to get a nice flat print area, which is perfect for sublimation because I need to make sure those inks are going to dye fully down into the fabric. So now I've got a nice flat print area. I'll just give it a quick preheat. Adjust my pressure as needed. Use the over-the-center pressure adjustment knob. I'm going to line up my sublimation transfer. Adjust my platen a little bit more there. Doesn't seem to be wanting to load down there, but we got a good pressure so we can talk about the example here. You can closely see there's actually already been, just from that little bit of application, some discoloration and changes that have happened on this light fabric. So let's talk about why this happened. Remember, sublimation applies at 365 degrees for 50 seconds. Very high dwell time and a very high temperature. So that's what's causing a yellowing or a scorching of a fabric, even a light color like this. So what we're going to look for is we're going to want to look for a transfer that applies at a lower dwell time and a lower pressure. This transfer is different from a sublimation transfer. It's actually a digitally printed transfer. So what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to print performance wear fabrics with a full color image without having the yellowing or the scorching of the fabrics that we're seeing with sublimation. This transfer specifically is called SuperTech Clear Matte, and it applies at 280 degrees for 10 seconds. So I've got the Fusion heat press locked down at 280 degrees. Switch my camera angle so you guys can see it a little bit closer over here at the Fusion. And I'm just going to load my t-shirt on. Preheated at the 280 degrees. And I've actually had this heat press on for a while today, so the platen's already been warmed up. But anytime you want to use a transfer that's at a lower temperature, like 280 degrees, I recommend just preheating that bottom platen for a few seconds before you start your first application. And that's always really good anytime you use a low temperature transfer, to just do this step, especially first thing in the morning if that's the first time you've locked the press down. All right, so I've got my garment loaded back on there. I'm going to line up my SuperTech Clear Matte Transfer. Apply that at 280 degrees for the 10 seconds. You may want to choose to use a cover sheet to cover your garment, especially if you're using a white fabric, just in case something from maybe a sublimation transfer or another ink has stuck to the top of your heat press. Always a good practice to get into. So 10 seconds on the timer. 280 degrees and a medium pressure. So already in comparison to sublimation, we've dropped our temperature down by about 100 degrees. We've cut our dwell time by about 40 seconds, so we've significantly dropped that. And our pressure is no longer a firm pressure, it's a medium pressure also. So it's going to allow us to get that full color, soft, matte finish that we want on the performance fabric without having any scorching or any marking issues. This is a cold peel, so I'm going to give it a few seconds to cool down. I can throw these all aside and peel them later, or I could just give it a couple seconds there at the press. So once I have that complete, I've got a nice completed design on the garment that's going to allow me to actually have a matte finish. And I'll change my camera angle there so you guys can kind of see it on the top of the press here. But it's very soft, very nice matte finish. Another nice thing about SuperTech Clear Matte is we're looking at performance wear, is it has that stretch that I want for my fabric. So in comparison to a product like the sublimation transfer, again, it gives you that full color finish that we were seeing, but we're going to now be able to avoid that yellowing or that scorch mark. With sublimation as well, if you absolutely want to use a sublimation printer for your polyester fabrics, I consider looking at different blank suppliers like Vapor Apparel that actually has garments that are sublimatable and that will not yellow when they're heated up under a high heat. So that's another recommendation for using materials like sublimation inks on your garments. So that gives some basics when you're looking at light fabrics. So light fabrics are about as easy as they come. They don't cause as many issues because they don't have any dyes that are in the fabric. So we don't usually see scorching as much, and they're not as big of an issue when we look at performance fabrics that are light colors, just like this white fabric we applied. Now as we move to darker shades, royals, reds, navies, those are the colors where scorch marks tend to really start to show up and really start to cause some headaches and some challenges. So we're going to talk about some low temperature transfers that work for colored fabrics because the SuperTech Clear Matte that we just applied is only for light colored fabrics. So we're going to talk about some transfer options for that and how to kind of decorate with different finishes on your performance wear. So let's head over to the table so that we can kind of go over those different transfer options. So just like with the light transfers, one thing to note about dark fabrics is that what a lot of people do with performance wear, and since I think about 86% of you guys have experienced an issue with scorch marks, you've probably done the same thing. And that is you go over to your normal heat press. I'll drop back in my other platen. You take your tried and true transfer. So heat transfers in general have always been applied at a different temperature of 365 or 320 degrees. So for 100% cotton fabrics, that worked perfect because if you think about it, cotton fabrics didn't have all of the synthetic properties and all of the moisture wicking capabilities of these performance fabrics. So as a traditional decorator, I stuck my polyester garment onto the heat press, my navy shirt. And this, for example, is set at that 365 degrees that would be a traditional screen printed transfer application. I take my goof-proof transfer from Transfer Express, preheat my garment for a few seconds to get the moisture and wrinkles out, just as I always have for all of my cotton garments. And then what I do is I line up my transfer onto my shirt, make sure I've got my pressure adjusted, and I applied it for the correct application, which is 4 seconds, firm pressure, 365 degrees. You'll notice, although the transfer applies correctly, you're going to notice a nice yellow, or a nice scorch mark that actually happens on the fabrics. Let me see if I can get this zoomed in here to show that up a little closer. So you can see how there's been a distinct kind of discoloration that's happened on this fabric. That's what we're looking at when we're dealing with scorch marks. It's a shiny type of discoloration that happens from that high heat. So instead of applying it 365 degrees and getting this scorch mark like I have, I'm going to want to load my garment on and then look for a low temperature alternative. So what I've done is, instead of taking my goof-proof transfer that I've always applied at 365 degrees for 4 seconds, I want to use a low temperature solution. So I'm not going to take that transfer and just drop the temperature down. I always caution decorators, that tends to be something that people always do with their transfers. They just say, okay, you're telling me I need a lower temperature, I'll just take my transfers that I already use and apply them at that lower temperature. You want to specifically look for a transfer that's recommended to apply at that lower temperature. And for a screen printed ink transfer, this one's going to be called ElastiPrints. It's just another ink type that's available from Transfer Express. I'm going to move back over to my Fusion since it's down at a lower temperature than I need it to be at. And now I'm just going to load the back of the garment on so we can kind of compare the difference between that high temperature that gave me that scorch mark and a lower temperature. So again, I've just loaded that on. I'll preheat to get some of the moisture and wrinkles. And during this session, we're going to look at transfer options for both final cutters, for solvent print and cut machines, as well as those of you that just own heat presses or are looking for different solutions. So this one, again, just that screen printed ink. So it is good for your higher quantities, good for printing at events and on demand. It's just a basic screen printed ink that's meant to cure at a lower temperature. This one specifically has 2 images on my sheet, so I'm going to need to tear them apart. I don't think I have scissors, so I'm going to do it the old school way and just tear them quickly apart so I can apply. Of course, you would want to make sure you've got a nice straight line and use your scissors. I'm going to line up my transfer with the ElastiPrints ink transfer. And then I'm going to apply that for 275 degrees for 15 seconds. Again, this is the same principle. We're seeing a very much lower temperature than we saw in the past with other transfers, and that's going to allow me to either completely eliminate or significantly reduce the issues of scorch marking on the fabric. We actually have a lot of decorators. This is a cold peel, so I'll give it a few seconds. We have a lot of decorators that actually do screen printing 100% of the time, and will even use these types of transfers for low temperature options when they want to be able to not have any issues with curing or scorching the fabric with their dryers. Looks like it's cooled down enough for me to peel, so that paper can be thrown away. And then I've got a completed design. So the scorch marking, again, with that lower temperature, is significantly reduced when you decide to use a lower temperature option, especially on dark fabrics when you're considering navies, reds, blacks, and really dark shades like that. I always tell decorators, if they're looking for a solution where you have those hard to decorate items, and we'll talk about those later, sometimes selecting the right color and choosing a heathered garment or a lighter shade will help to reduce scorch marking as well. So this is a great option when you're looking for screen printed transfers or for transfer options for higher quantities. The next transfer we're going to look at is another low temperature solution, or 2 other low temperature solutions for when you want to get either a personalized or use your vinyl cutter for personalizing apparel that's performance wear. So again, I just have another 100% polyester garment. And anytime you're selecting transfers, of course, it's key to just look for those ones that apply down at that low temperature. So this one is cad-cut Premium Plus. Premium Plus especially offers an application where it can apply down at 280 degrees for 15 seconds. Traditionally, it's always been applied around 300 degrees for about 8 to 10 seconds. But those 20 seconds or 20 degrees of temperature can really help to reduce scorch marking on your fabrics. I'm going to preheat to get some of those moisture and wrinkles out. And then I'm just going to line up my transfer. So once I have that lined up in the correct position, I'll apply it at that 280, 15 seconds. And this helps me, of course, being able to personalize garments and create different looks and finishes with my heat press. Premium Plus is a warm to cool peel, so I'm just going to allow it cool down for a couple of seconds. Once it's completely cooled down, I can peel back the entire carrier. Anytime you peel the Premium Plus product, it has a lot of stretch and rebound in the actual heat transfer material. So you just want to be careful to not do what I call a grip and rip, which a lot of decorators will do when they just grab it and tear it as quick as possible, and that can cause some stretching of your performance wear fabric, so keep that in mind. Just like we saw with that SuperTech opaque product, this one also has a lot of that stretch and rebound that you're looking for performance wear. You can also see as I slide this over that we have eliminated the scorch marking issues that you traditionally would get with the higher temperature, being able to be down at that 280 degrees. So that one again is Premium Plus, which works really great for your matte finishes or all your basic colors. One thing I really like that's been trending in really any kind of athletic garment is kind of that tone-on-tone look where it kind of gives you more of a laser etched look. So there's actually another material that applies at a lower temperature that allows you to create that unique finish on performance wear fabrics. So since earlier I had showed you guys an option of being able to change out your platen to eliminate any type of pocket issue that you would get from a hooded sweatshirt, I want to show you another option of where we would use a heat printing pillow to help to reduce too firm of a pressure. So using a heat printing pillow inside your garment will help to alleviate some of the pressure that can be caused on performance fabrics as well. So it's another good option when you're printing performance items like this. So the heat printing pillow just goes down into the garment. It's right in between the two layers. Up onto my platen, and that's going to allow me to, again, this pocket will fall down in there, and then I'll get a nice flat print area for my transfer. Since I have that depth of that pillow in there, I am going to adjust my pressure a little bit and test it. Looks like I'm good to go there. I've got it nice and tested out. And then this low temperature transfer is called SuperTech Clear Matte. So if you're playing along at home, this is that same product that we used for a full color finish and can actually just be cut on a vinyl cutter to give you that matte finish that you're looking for. So it's a little bit crazy to think about as you're looking at this transfer. Keep in mind that the super clear parts that you're seeing with the foot and the climber track is actually the material, and the matte part of the frosted carrier is actually the carrier holding the material on. So the clear material is what specifically is going to stick down onto the garment once we finish applying it. This material applies at 10 seconds, 280 degrees. It is a cold peel, so I'm going to set it aside and let it cool down a little bit. And then we'll go back and peel the carrier for the completed design there. Joe, do I have any questions that have came in from the viewer audience?
No, there are no questions so far.
Okay, great. I think I forgot, but if you have questions on what we're decorating here, or anything with the performance wear that we're printing, or challenges that you've specifically had, on the right-hand side of your screen there is a chat and a question box, so feel free to chat those into me. I'll answer them on screen, and Joe's standing by as well to help respond to them if I don't get to the questions immediately. So it looks like we've cooled down there. Go ahead and peel back my carrier. Then you can see it's giving me a really unique kind of frosted, understated finish that works really well on different fabrics. So we'll zoom in there so we can kind of get a look over here on the camera screen. but you can kind of see how it's created just a tone-on-tone look. Now I can easily take something like this and put a neon green or something over top of it just to create a really cool tone-on-tone look. But again, another low temperature solution for when you're printing performance wear and allows you to do some more special effects. So special effects are very popular when it comes to personalizing any kind of item, and there's now low temperature solutions that you can use on your performance wear, so you're not limited to just basic colors. The next next design that we're actually going to look at is going to be one that allows us to print with a metallic finish. So there's actually transfers out there that are called FoilTech. So whether you have a solvent or an eco-solvent printer, the transfer that I'm printing here is actually going to be a full color transfer that can be printed on those solvent printers like a Roland Versacam or a Roland BN20. The material comes in a metallic shade, so this is the metallic white, but you can print metallic silver, metallic gold, or you could order them in transfers as well. As a full color digital transfer, Stahls offers the FoilTech product in this metallic. So you're able to now take your performance wear to the next level and avoid scorch marks with these types of metallic finishes. This applies again 280 degrees for two applications of 5 seconds. So again, you're still seeing that same 280 degree temperature. And that's important. So think about all of the low temperature transfers that we've applied here today. 275 degrees, 280 degrees. Those have been the sweet spots that we've used for all of our transfers. Usually over 280 degrees is that threshold where the performance fabric starts to change or scorch under the heat. It's just like whenever you look at a performance garment from, say, Under Armour. Let's say you're ironing out a polo shirt and it says cool iron. Anything over that 280 degrees is going to start to leave that shiny scorch mark, and that's why you want to look for those low temperature transfers at that temperature or below to help to reduce that. This garment is just a SuperTech garment from Sanmar, as most of the polyester garments have been. Going to go ahead and preheat. Adjust my pressure since I had originally changed it for the pillow. Once I'm at a medium pressure and I've got the garment preheated, I always like to preheat all of my performance fabrics. I think it really helps to reduce and eliminate a lot of the moisture that tends to be in a moisture-wicking polyester. And then I'm going to line my transfer up onto my shirt with that metallic white finish. Grab a cover sheet to cover up my design. Anytime you use something that's in what's called the tech transfer type, whether it's a printable transfer or a product that you've bought for your Versacam, I always recommend covering that with a carrier to hold the plastic part down from curling under the heat of the heat press. I'm going to lock this down for 5 seconds. Peel back that carrier, and then remember this gets a full 10-second application, so I peel the carrier off, and then I'm just going to reseal it to get that full application in. Remove my cover sheet. I'm going to just grab my remote to switch angles so you guys can see the metallic finish that's on this fabric. So again, it just gives you a low temperature solution that has a little bit more of a pearlescent sheen. This one specifically is the white, so I find that it gives the truest color, but the gold and the silver are also great options. Again, stretch and that low temperature solution that we're looking for. Joe, I see you chatting away over there or typing. Do we have some questions that have come in?
Yeah, they'd like to know if you can press on top of the SuperTech mat with a Transfer Express transfer, or does it only have to be a cad-cut material?
I would recommend sticking with a heat transfer material like a cad-cut material or a digital transfer over the SuperTech clear mat because the screen printed ink needs to stick directly to the fibers on the fabric, and essentially that clear mat, although it's super clear and very see-through, it's still a vinyl that's on there, so I would recommend no to the transfers, but yes on the other ones.
And Jen is very interested in glitter and rhinestones, and she's wondering, are you going to cover any of that in today's webinar?
I am, actually, so we can jump to that next. Joe, do I have any other questions before I move to that?
Oh, that'll take care of it for now.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump on to that and let's talk about when you run into those issues like rhinestones, like glitter, and those transfers that don't offer a low temperature solution. So far, everything I've shown you here today has had an ability to be a low temperature because it's got a matte finish, it's just your basic print. But of course, we know that glitter materials, rhinestones, and a lot of different special effects that are at a higher temperature, like 320, 350 degrees, don't come in that low temperature solution. So these are what I consider hard to print or unlikely circumstances that you run into with performance fabrics. And let's talk about how to combat those. I'm going to grab my next sample, which is of course a glitter flake, heat transfer, and a performance wear fabric. So here I just have 100% polyester SuperTech garment and a basic cad-cut glitter flake transfer. I'm going to start to adjust my clam heat press down to 320 degrees, which is the traditional application for glitter materials. So as a rule of thumb, anytime you run into an issue like this where you have a transfer that doesn't offer a low temperature solution, like the cad-cut glitter flake, you want to look at, the rule of thumb is keeping the temperature the same, so you don't want to make any adjustments to the temperature as it's applied. I don't recommend taking a transfer and applying it down at 280 degrees, of course, even these types of transfers. Glitter flake, if the fabric allows for it, can apply at 300 degrees for 15 seconds. So that's a solution, but remember we want to get further down to 280 degrees, and sometimes that 300 still leaves a scorch mark. So there are some accessories that you can use with your garment and your heat press. One that I recommend always having on hand for these hard to decorate items or these unlikely circumstances is a flexible application pad. So the flexible application pad is basically a siliconized cover sheet. It's a little bit stretchy, it's very thick, much heavier than your traditional cover sheet. So this is very different from your non-stick or your Teflon coated cover sheets or your butcher paper and those types of cover sheets. This one specifically is much thicker and is designed to pull heat out of items and keep them from scorching. So it's been used for years with leather items and other synthetics, like to not make plastic buttons melt on a button-up shirt. But you can also use those same principles with performance wear to help protect them. So it looks like I'm gearing down towards 320 degrees over here on my clam heat press. So we'll move it over a little bit towards there so you guys can see me apply this. So I'm just going to load my item onto the press. Preheat it as I would any other item. Remember, the application for cad-cut glitter flake is 320 degrees, 10 to 15 seconds for a medium pressure. So I want to leave the temperature at 320 degrees. To accommodate for the heat that's going to be pulled out by my flexible application pad as I place it over my transfer, I want to double the time. So leave the temperature the same, but double the time. So instead of 10 seconds, I'm going to be applying this at 20 seconds. And that's going to allow enough heat to transfer through this flexible application pad down to my glitter flake and down to my garment for a complete application. Once I have that in place, I'm just going to lock my heat press down. For the full 20 seconds, and that's going to give me the application. This isn't a 100% perfect solution, but I always recommend keeping the flexible application pad on hand. As you start to bring in performance wear items, always test them before you start the application, and then you will know whether or not you need to incorporate a flexible application pad or if the transfer at 320 will be okay. So I'm going to peel the carrier back here. Give this a few seconds to cool down since the neon fabric has been a little bit hot under the heat press, which is at about 340 degrees right now. Once that cools down, we'll get a completed look at it. Joe, any other questions that have came in?
No, there are no questions.
Okay, great. So this will be a great solution for if you're doing that glitter flake, those rhinestones, you need to cover them during the application to help pull out some of that heat. So just keep the rule of thumb in mind where you're going to keep the temperature as is, double the time, and it helps give you a solution for when you put the glitter material on these performance wear fabrics. So sticking with hard to decorate items, the last garment that we're going to look at is for those instances where no matter what you do, it doesn't seem like anything is helping keep the scorch marks from the fabric. I always tell decorators the low temperature transfer is your first resort, and that is going to work probably 90% of the time, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's always going to guarantee that every fabric 100% is not going to scorch if you apply it at 280 degrees. There's just a whole lot of variables that go into performance where that can keep them to even scorch down at 200 degrees. So for some of those instances, what we need to do is we need to try to eliminate as much of the scorch marking as possible. So for that, I'm going to look at a garment that I know is going to leave a scorch mark that I've had challenges with printing before. And this one, specifically this dark gray fabric, is going to be a zip-up jacket. So when I'm looking to print zip-up jackets, I'm just printing the left chest area here with a small logo. So for me to lay this entire garment onto the platen, it could cause a scorch mark issue across the entire fabric that I'm trying to avoid. So I need to either isolate that print area to a smaller area using maybe an interchangeable platen like I'm going to use at the Fusion heat press, or I could use a smaller pillow or a smaller platen that's going to allow me to help reduce the area that's actually touching the heater, and that will help also. So let's switch this out to a smaller size platen, like a 6x10, and switch over to our Fusion heat press. So to do that, just like with the clam, this press has a gold knob underneath that I can adjust, lift out that 16x20, and drop in my small 6x10. So this is going to eliminate a large part of the area on the jacket from scorching and help to reduce the print area. Now, anytime you switch to a small platen like this, especially if you're on performance wear, you want to be cautious of the pressure that you're applying down to this fabric. Keep in mind that this 16x20 platen is a large mass that's going down onto a very small platen now at the 6x10. So it was once a medium pressure on my 16x20 bottom platen is now going to feel like a very, very firm pressure. So I want to make sure when I'm adjusting the pressure that it's going to read out more of a lighter pressure so that it's going to feel like a medium pressure on that 6x10, and that'll make sure my transfer gets the full application, but not too much to where it's going to leave a lot of marking. I'm going to apply this down to the other size of my transfer, or size of my garment. The transfer I'm using is just another digital transfer in that same metallic white foil tech option. So there are other low temperature solutions for when you're printing performance wear that aren't metallic if you need this full color transfer. Anything in the Stahls tech line, so SuperTech opaque, SuperTech Sublistop are also good options for printing full color transfers at that low temperature. I'm going to line my transfer up, and then I'm also going to use my flexible application pad and just increase my time. So instead of it being 2 sets of 5 seconds, I'm actually going to do 2 hits of 15 seconds to ensure I get the nice full application that I need. And this will help to reduce the scorch marking that we're seeing on the fabric. It may not completely eliminate it, but being able to isolate that area that I just need for my left chest transfer, and using the accessory like the flexible application pad, it'll help to reduce some of that. So peel back that carrier, cover it back up, switch so you guys can see what I'm doing here as the heat press locks down for the additional 5 seconds, or 15 seconds, sorry. Although you can't see the screen, the pressure is reading out at a very light pressure. So again, that's going to feel like a medium down in that 16x20 platen, or 6x10 platen. So that gives me my completed design. And again, it helps to completely reduce or eliminate the scorch marking from the fabric. So it helps to help with that. Anytime you can get the seams, like the high seam here of the collar, the seam of the shirt, off of the platen, that'll help to reduce scorch marking that you see, because those areas tend to gloss up first because they're hitting that platen at that higher pressure. So keep those in mind, especially as you move to fabrics like the button-up shirt or the zip-ups or button-ups and things like that that have left chest prints. Joe, do I have any questions that have came in?
Yeah, Zach would like to know, he says that he uses thermal film the most on poly. He's wondering, are there any tips for that, or is it basically the same as using the glitter?
For thermofilm on polyester garments, if you're doing a football jersey and you're noticing scorching, then yes, I would definitely consider looking at using that flexible application pad. First, before that, if you're doing just like polyester moisture wicking type things like I've applied here, I would consider looking at the Premium Plus product in comparison with thermofilm. Using a temperature or using a transfer that is guaranteed to apply at a lower temperature always has a better success rate than using the flexible application pad over another transfer. That's when I would consider the last result where you absolutely have to use that finish. So I would recommend for you using Premium Plus on those fabrics.
Jen is also stating that she does have that flexible application pad, but sometimes on her dark black performance fabrics, she still gets a bit of a box. Any kind of a additional tip for the dark garment?
The only other tip really for the dark garment is to just know what your pressure is at and to adjust it if needed. So if you're using a very firm pressure and your transfer only needs a light pressure, just make sure, a medium pressure is 4 to 6. So be on that 4 end instead of the 6, 7 end, where a lot of decorators tend to go because they think, more pressure is always better. But that will allow you to help to reduce some of the scorching. Other than that, it's really just being able to isolate that print area so that it's not as noticeable across the entire fabric.
That's it for now.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and go back to the main camera here, and we'll kind of cover or go over everything that we've talked about here today so far within the class. So specifically when printing synthetic fabrics and looking at scorch marking, the first tip is always look for that low temperature transfer solution. So we went over a few options. So a screen printed transfer option like Elasti prints from Transfer Express will apply at 275 degrees, so it'll allow you to reduce scorch marks. Other low temperature solutions for the vinyl cutter are cad-cut Premium Plus or SuperTech Clear Matte, which was the one that had given you that tone-on-tone look. And then third, if you're looking to get into digital transfers, or you have a solvent or eco-solvent printer and you want to print those full color images for performance wear, that's where I look at the tech line. So SuperTech Opaque, SuperTech Sublistop, and the Foil Tech for metallics on performance wear. So always look for those low temperature solutions first. Second, what we're going to look at is being able to have accessories on hand. So I recommend having that flexible application pad, having the right pillows, having the right platens, and all of those areas that help to eliminate seams from causing scorch markings on different areas of garments and help you get a nice flat print surface as well. Third, as you start to move to these low temperature transfers that we're recommending, always once you start the application, remember to preheat your platen first for application, and that'll help just to ensure that you're getting heat through the bottom layer as well as the top when you're heating up that transfer. Since it's lower temperature, just make sure it stays nice and durable. So I always recommend that as a first step as well as you heat up the press in the morning. Joe, as we start to conclude, any other questions that have come in?
There was a question asked about preventing scorching if you're using a cap press.
When using a cap press with scorching, the same principles would apply. So you just want to look for that low temperature solution and use cover sheets and accessories as needed. So the cap press specifically on a hat, if you're getting a marking, just making sure you're getting a nice flat print area. So for me, traditionally what I'll use, I don't have one here, but I will actually raise the print area if needed. I guess first I would say make sure you have those interchangeable platens that you need for your cap press, because that'll help to make sure you're getting that flat pressure and you're not going to have the scorching. If the hat that you have just doesn't seem to fit one of the interchangeable stock styles, you can always use a Print Perfect pad, which is kind of like a thicker mouse pad, similar to what's on the bottom of your platens on your heat press, to raise the print area, and that helps give you that nice flat print surface. Other than that, you can use the flexible application pad or a low temperature transfer to avoid scorch marks. All right, Joe, looks like we've had no other questions. I appreciate each of you guys coming on today and spending some time with us, learning a little bit about scorch marks and how to overcome them. I hope you guys have success with printing performance wear, and thanks for watching.